Western media, specifically the New York Times, Washington Post, and the Time magazine, is that why are Indians, Hindus, and Hinduism for that matter, projected in a negative way for a very long time, right? And could you also summarize this in the context of a 21st century narrative?
Yeah, I think it's a very strange thing when you're looking at it from my point of view. When you're thinking to yourself, I understand why the New York Times is covering American politics in a certain way. Makes sense. I even can understand why they're covering Israeli politics in a certain way as well. I mean, Israeli politics are very tied into American politics, and the New York Times has this history, Jewish history. But then you look at India and you're thinking, why would they choose to cover it one way or the other? Why are they building narratives that are clearly anti-Hindu and absolutely anti-Modi? Why do they feel like they have skin in the game? And I think at least a part of that answer is it challenges their worldview. It challenges their worldview when they look at a country that is succeeding on a model that they don't necessarily agree with, which is a model that is not, at least recently in India's more recent history, is more capitalist, is also pluralistic without losing national identity. And that's something that I think fries the New York Times brain, because they're thinking either you're going to have a pluralistic society or you're going to have a nationalist society. They certainly don't want to allow the model of a nation that's able to do both at the same time to exist, because it really subverts their worldview, which is this black and white either or notion that either you're nationalist and you're a Nazi, or you're a pluralist and you're a very good socialist. And I think that has a lot to do with how they're covering India, though I do think there is also something that is more subtle and more insidious that goes back a very long way in the New York Times, stretching to the early 20th century, when they were covering Hindu in a way that Hinduism and Hindu beliefs and practices in a way that is absolutely shocking. And it's shocking to read it today. And there has never been any kind of accounting, there's never been any kind of reckoning at the New York Times for the way they've covered Hinduism in the way that they've done with other religions or other races or ethnicities. So you have to think to yourself, there is something that's maybe in the groundwater culturally at the New York Times that is racist, to put it plainly.
What's the Hindu panic story that was published? I think in a post 9/11 environment. I was very interested to know more about this.
Yeah, so that's what I mean when I'm saying that this goes back very long ways, and that was in around 1911. There was a wealthy woman, American woman named Sarah Ball, who was a widow who had inherited a lot of money, and she became very closely involved with Swami Vivekananda, who was, I'm sure has a very high profile in India, but at the time was also really credited with introducing Hinduism and Hindu beliefs to Americans. And she donated all of her money, she left it in her will to him and the Hindu Vedanta Society rather than to her own daughter. And so the daughter was very motivated to start agitating against this agreement. But the New York Times really picked up the mantle as well. And they started to talk about the quote unquote harmful influences of Hinduism. They characterize Hinduism as, again, this is a quote, a strange cult. And they really cast it in terms of, again, another quote, a psychic conspiracy to mislead this woman. So these are all these kinds of very damaging racist tropes that the Times introduced not only into their own newspaper, but of course into the American public consciousness, because they were a very influential newspaper at the time as they are today. And we can say, okay, this was a long time ago, but then we have to ask the question, why have they never held themselves to account for what they did? Why had they never gone back and looked at this the way they've looked at other races and cultures that they've covered in inappropriate ways, and tried to at least apologize for it, or to find an explanation, and to show that they've actually changed their ways, which it really doesn't seem that they have done.
Now, so this is during the early 20th century and not
Right.
21st, like I said. So I stand corrected. And
Yes.
this is actually a wrong precedent being set, because Swami Vivekananda spoke in Chicago just a few years before that, and you could see the tremendous amount of positivity that he spread with his